Well, good morning.
Good morning.
As the same as last week, we are also going to be reading, in addition to Exodus 20:14, another passage out of the book of Matthew, Matthew chapter 5, verses 27 through 30. Matthew chapter 5, verses 27 through 30. Is there anything in your life that you wish you would have started doing sooner? For some of us, maybe, it's that we would have started saving for retirement, but earlier. For some of us, maybe it's that we would have started exercising, but earlier in our lives. I read a quote the other day that I found highly relatable. It said, "I wish I was as skinny as the first time I thought that I was fat." For some of us, maybe it's that we would have started working on that bachelor's degree or that master's degree a little earlier. Whatever it is for you, all of us have something that we wished we would have taken care of a long time ago, but now it just may be too late. I love the way that Bill Hybels defines discipline in his book, Who You Are When No One's Looking. Discipline, he says, discipline is delayed gratification. Delayed gratification. And delayed gratification is purposefully scheduling the pain of life early, trusting that a much more enjoyable phase will result later. Beckham hates brushing his teeth. The toothpaste tastes bad. The bristles hurt his gum. His father often but accidentally gags him while brushing. For him, it is instantly gratifying to not brush his teeth at age 3. It will be tremendously more gratifying when he has all of his teeth at age 60. I hate running. There is nothing fun about running to me. It is the equivalent of medieval torture. It is instantly gratifying to sit on the couch and eat potato chips. But it will be tremendously more gratifying when I can play with my grandkids one day without running out of breath. There are couples who have been married for 30 plus years who have never addressed some of those basic elements to a healthy marriage. And it might have been painful and hard to do it earlier in the marriage. It will be infinitely more painful now, 30 years later. You see, you can apply Bill Hybels' principle to just about any area of your life. Finances, relationships, child rearing, health. Sometimes we need to schedule the pain of life now so that we don't get ourselves into real trouble later. And when it comes to the topic of fidelity in marriage, Jesus suggests something of the same principle. in Matthew chapter 5, verses 27 through 30. Jesus is speaking, and he says, "You have heard that it was said, 'You shall not commit adultery.' But I tell you that anyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart. If your right eye causes you to stumble, gouge it out and throw it away. It is better for you to lose one part of your body than for your whole body to be thrown into hell. And if your right hand causes you to stumble, cut it off and throw it away. It is better for you to lose one part of your body than for your whole body to go into hell." This is the word of the Lord. This is one of those passages that lets me know that anyone who says they take all of the Bible literally is a liar. If we did, the church would be made up of the blind and the maimed. As one commentator puts it, Jesus reaffirms the law and then he radicalizes it. It was one of his teaching habits. Jesus didn't negate Exodus chapter 20, verse 14, "You shall not commit adultery." No. He takes it to the extreme. According to Jesus, it's not enough just to abstain from committing adultery. Even if you've looked at a woman with impure intentions, you're just as guilty. Whew. As with the sermon last week, something seems off balanced, doesn't it? A look is equivalent to adultery? Who? I'm asking you, Jesus. Who can control those flashes of the eyes all the time? Last week, Greek language saved us. Can it do it again?
Hope so.
According to William Barclay, the famous commentator, it can. William Barclay says, according to the literal meaning of the Greek, the man who is condemned is the man who looks at a woman with the deliberate intention of lusting after her. The deliberate intention. Gentlemen listening today, Jesus may understand when you have a temporary lapse in purity, but to ogle a woman with the intention of arousing sinful desire, that's inexcusable. Not unforgivable, but inexcusable. He speaks so harshly against it. Why? Because he knows. He knows what that little seed of lust can grow into. No one just decides to have an affair one day out of the blue. No one, sipping their morning cup of coffee, scanning through the orange leader, suddenly thinks to themselves, you know what? I think I'll have an affair this afternoon. Yes, I've decided it. Let me update my schedule. No. Majority of the time, affairs begin with not being able to control your eyes. to control lust. And from there, it evolves step by step, look by look, internet search by internet search, until one day you've gone too far. It's the nature of sin. Perhaps you've heard this famous quote by Ravi Zacharias: sin will take you farther than you want to go, keep you longer than you want to stay, and cost you more than you want to pay. It's true of all sin. It's especially true when it comes to sexual sin. And you will wish that you would have learned the art of discipline a long time ago. That art of delayed gratification. So Jesus advises us, when it comes to lust, discipline yourself now. As painful as it may be, discipline yourself now, so that it does not consume your entire life later. If your right eye, he says, causes you to stumble, gouge it out and throw it away. It is better for you to lose one part of your body than for your whole body to be thrown into hell. So how can we discipline ourselves when it comes to lust? Well, I have a few practical steps, and then we'll be finished. And by the way, I hope that this is the most boring sermon you've ever heard me preach before. I hope that the majority of you sitting out there are going, this is boring, I'm bored to tears, this has nothing to do with me. That's my sincere and honest prayer. But you've seen the news lately, and you know it's more common than we would like for it to be. So how do we discipline ourselves when it comes to lust? We're going to continue to use the thought of Bill Hybels and his book, although he is not writing about adultery and lust. I find it highly applicable to this topic. One of his suggestions for developing discipline is advanced decision making. Advanced decision making. You must, he writes, you must make advanced decisions as how you are going to practice discipline in the various dimensions of your life. It's the same thing that Job did. It's the same thing Job did when he said in 31 verse 1, I have made a covenant with my eyes not to look lustfully at a young woman. In advance, I have already decided that I am not going to gaze at another woman with sinful intentions. That's a good covenant to make now, because we're no good at decision making in the moment. If you are going to decide whether to lust or not to lust at the moment of opportunity, well, guess what? You're going to fail. You must decide in advance. You must make some of those painful decisions now. Don't decide at the moment of opportunity. When I worked on staff at the Woodlands First Baptist Church, we had a staff policy that none of us were to ride in the car alone with anyone of the opposite sex. Did the pastor actually believe that anything was going to happen? No, not necessarily. But we didn't want to make that decision at the moment of opportunity. We made the decision a long time ago. In fact, we just took the opportunity out of the equation altogether. We made an advanced decision that we wouldn't ever ride in the car alone with anyone of the opposite sex. And there were times that the policy was downright annoying. It was annoying. I chaperoned more trips to Walmart and Party City to pick up Wednesday night supplies than I ever wanted to. It was a nuisance. I'd be deeply studying in my office and I'd hear a knock on the door. Ryan, we've got to run to Walmart. Can you go? No, I don't want to run to Walmart with you. I didn't want to be interrupted just to third wheel in the back seat. There were times when we were all tempted to say, nothing's going to happen, just go. Until something did. Not in the car per se, but on two separate occasions, over the span of approximately 2 years, two of my most beloved friends and co-pastors fell into the trap of lust. And they lost their ministry. I've not been in ministry long. And even then, I've seen 3 pastors that I've personally worked with lose their ministry because of lust. I thought I'd only see 1 during my whole career. I've seen 3 so far. Ronald Reagan says he learned the need for decision-making early in his life. An aunt had taken him to a cobbler to have a pair of shoes made for him. The shoemaker asked young Ronald Reagan, do you want a square toe or do you want a rounded toe? Reagan hemmed and hawed, so the cobbler said, well, come back in a day or 2 and let me know what you've decided. A few days later, the shoemaker saw Reagan on the street and he asked him, have you decided about the shoes? I still haven't made up my mind, the boy answered. Very well, said the cobbler. And when Reagan received the shoes, he was shocked to see that one shoe had a square toe on it and the other had a round toe on it. Looking at those shoes every day taught me a lesson, said Reagan years later. If you don't make your own decisions, somebody else will make them for you. Schedule the pain now. Make some advanced decisions now. Don't ride in the car alone with that woman. Don't even begin a private conversation with that old high school flame on Facebook. Don't keep secrets from your spouse. Turn your phone off at night. Don't wait for the moment of opportunity to decide if you're going to do the right thing. Now, I'm sure that many of you have already thought this. Pastor, that's great and all. And I've already made some decisions in advance. But even then, I'm struggling to keep them. What do I do now? Well, I'm glad you asked. Bill Hybels' suggestion, his other suggestion for developing discipline in your life is accountability. How easy is that? Accountability. He writes, ask 2 or 3 friends to hold you accountable for your decisions. Tell them this, I've made some advanced decisions because I really want the payoff. Will you please hold me to them? It's easier said than done, isn't it? One of my pastor buddies says it all the time. Confession is good for the soul, but bad for the reputation. So I understand. asking for accountability can be difficult, especially when it comes to today's topic. It can be very difficult to confess that you are struggling with something like this, but confess we must. So perhaps this will ease the anxiety of confession and accountability. Just to know this: one, no one is immune from sin. No one is. Terrible, horrible sin. There is not a man I know that hasn't struggled with this in some form or fashion. God created mutual confession and accountability and community so that we could have some form of tangible hope. We need it if we're going to have tangible hope to get out of this sin trap. 1 John 1, 8 through 10 says, if we claim to be without sin, we deceive ourselves, and the truth is not in us. If we confess our sins, He is faithful and just and will forgive us our sins and purify us. Doesn't that sound good? If you've ever struggled with a sin, to be purified, that's what God will do. He'll purify us from all unrighteousness. If we claim we have not sinned, we make Him out to be a liar. That's what the passage says, and His word is not in us. Throughout all phases of Christian history, all churches have practiced some form of confession and accountability. In the early church, it was performed in front of the entire congregation. The whole church got to witness this. A person found in sin would stand before the entire church and have to confess their sin, and then the community would surround that person and pray for them and support them. You'll be pleased to hear that we won't be doing that this morning. John Wesley, the founder of Methodism, was so concerned with confession and accountability that he devised a series of questions that his followers had to ask each other every week. More currently, Chuck Swindoll revealed 7 questions that he and a group of fellow pastors challenged each other with periodically. Here's the 7 questions. 1, have you been with a woman anywhere this past week that might be seen as compromising? 2, have any of your financial dealings lacked integrity? 3, have you exposed yourself to any sexually explicit material? 4, have you spent adequate time in Bible study and prayer? 5, have you given priority time to your family? 6, have you fulfilled the mandates of your calling? 7, have you just lied to me? Did you notice that 2 out of that 7 were about sexual issues? It's because it's a big one. God never intended for this faith to be an individual endeavor. There is no pick yourself up by your own bootstraps in the church. He created the church to be a place where struggling people come to help other struggling people. When it comes to sin, especially the sexual sin that Jesus is addressing, we need that accountability to help us overcome it. If you are currently struggling with this particular sin and you need accountability in your life, you have a pastor who will listen. You have a pastor who will be confidential. You have a pastor who will help provide a pathway to a healthier marriage and a healthier relationship with God. And you have a pastor who will not think less of you. When it comes to accountability in the church, I suggest contemplating the words of that famous theologian, Randy Newman, who sings, "You've got a friend in me. You've got a friend in me. You've got troubles. I've got 'em too. There isn't anything I wouldn't do for you. We stick together and we see it through, 'cause you've got a friend in me. Yeah, you've got a friend in me." If your right eye causes you to stumble, gouge it out and throw it away. It is better for you to lose one part of your body than for your whole body to be thrown into hell. If your right hand causes you to stumble, cut it off and throw it away, because it is better for you to lose one part of your body than for your whole body to go into hell. It's a tough message, but when it comes to lust, Jesus says, discipline yourself now before it consumes your entire life later. Pray with me.